On North America's east coast, wildlife adapt to the rise and fall of the tides. Tides provide a much-needed resting place for mammals and unveil a feast for thousands. On the jagged coast of Canada's eastern shore, a delicate and diverse ecosystem thrives on the fringes of the continent. Welcome to the Wild, Wild East. The tide is an awesome force of nature. 160 million metric tons of water of the Bay of Fundy twice each day. The waters carve and shape the shore, transforming the landscape. The creatures here evolved and adapted to exploit this ever-changing habitat. Great blue herons living inland get up to 40% of their diet from rodents. But here, it's 98% fish, easily snatched from the shallow, muddy puddles of low tide. Crows and ravens also scavenge along the rocks for stranded crabs and crustaceans. Low tide is a picnic, laid out twice daily for those living along the shore. But in just hours, it will all be gone. The tides in the Wild, Wild East are the highest anywhere in the world, rising as high as a 5-story building. Bluffs will become islands. Mudflats will become the ocean floor. Duncan's Cove, Nova Scotia is a rocky headland eroded out of granite barrens by eons of pounding surf. Even in the middle of summer, the ocean here remains chilly. This pod of gray seals doesn't seem to mind at all. Their protective layer of blubber keeps them warm, allowing them to stay in cold environments all year round, even in winter. Now the tide is high, and they're coming up for a breath of fresh air. Gray seals spend most of their lives in water, and they're most often spotted just like this. It's a behavior called bottling, bobbing in the water with just their heads sticking out to breathe and look around. Below the surface, the gray seal moves with an agility that seems improbable for a creature that weighs twice as much as a linebacker. Their webbed hind flippers propel them forward, and they use their front flippers to steer. Their flexible spine lets them twist and turn through the water and hunt down fish on the fly. The gray seal shares the oceans of the Wild, Wild East with its very similar looking but smaller cousin, the harbour seal. The easiest way to distinguish between the two species is to look at their heads from the side. Gray seals have a straight profile, like a horse's head. Its unflattering scientific name translates to hook-nosed sea pig. The harbour seal has a clearly defined muzzle, which is why its scientific name means sea dog. The harbour seal gets its common name because it's the seal most often seen close to land. Both gray seals and harbour seals feed, breed, and thrive in the cold waters of the Wild, Wild East. All seals are semi-aquatic, alternating between life on land and underwater. When the tide is high, haul-out spots on land are harder to find. It's easiest to stay wet, and seals have specially evolved to spend most of their time in the ocean. Like all mammals, seals need to hold their breath underwater. When they dive, their heart rate slows down from 120 beats per minute to as few as 4. That reflex allows them to use less oxygen and stay underwater longer, up to a half an hour. Their nostrils close to seal up their airway underwater. Their big eyes give them excellent underwater vision for spotting cod and other undersea delicacies. Seals have been known to travel great distances in search of food or a mate. Harbor seals are found in the Atlantic and the Pacific and as far south as Mexico. But gray seals stick to the waters of the North Atlantic. And Nova Scotia is home to the world's largest colony of gray seals. More than 100,000 congregate each winter to mate on Sable Island, 175 kilometers from the mainland. But even when they're not breeding, seals usually don't stray too far from places to haul out. High tide is high time for swimming. But low tide will offer a chance to relax. Later today, these rocks will be more exposed and will give the seals some place to rest. On another shore of the Wild Wild East, a seasonal visitor is about to transform the landscape. The tide is going out at Johnson's Mills, New Brunswick, a small town on the edge of the Bay of Fundy. The sleepy mudflats of this shoreline are about to be flooded with life. It's beginning now, off in the distance. These are semi-palmated sandpipers, about 100,000 in all. They're incredible migrators, flying 16,000 kilometers a year. They've come more than 3,000 kilometers to get here, flying up to 3 days at a time without rest. They spent the winter and early summer in the Arctic, breeding, nesting, and caring for their young. And now they're on their way to South America, another 4,000 or so kilometers. Flying that far requires a lot of fuel and the occasional pit stop. And that's why they're here, for a few weeks of rest before moving on. The Bay of Fundy is a stopping point for almost every semi-palmated sandpiper in the world. Conservationists consider them near threatened, so places like this, called staging points, are critical to the survival of the species. The mudflats of Johnson's Mills offer plenty of food and elbow room, the perfect place for sandpipers to rest, regroup, and refuel. The tide is out completely now. As the water pulls away, it reveals a seafood buffet for the little semi-palmated sandpipers. They hunt and peck, spearing the mud for the crustaceans, worms, and other creatures left behind by the changing tide. Few places in the world expose such massive mudflats at low tide. 1 square meter of mudflat contains as many as 100,000 mud shrimp. That's a good thing when there's 100,000 mouths to feed. There's plenty for everyone. Biologists think the sandpipers pick this place for a pit stop because of the abundance of food, and because the wide open mudflats allow them to see any predators on the horizon. The sandpipers feel around for movement in the mud. They search by touch for tiny shrimp and other creatures by jabbing around with their squat black beaks. They gorge here and double their weight in just 2 weeks. They're not the only ones taking advantage of this free lunch. This black-bellied plover is looking for sandworms and small crabs. He's also refueling for a long migration and is taking advantage of such a large tidal zone. Plovers are an entirely different family of wading birds, and they have a different hunting technique. They sprint through the shallows until they spot something tasty, then snatch it up, as opposed to the steady probing technique of the sandpiper. Soon, they'll all be moving on. For the harbor seals of Duncan's Cove, low tide offers the chance for some well-deserved rest. Hauling out onto the rocks is an important way for seals to conserve energy. Constant swimming burns a lot of calories. In a single day, an adult harbor seal must eat as much fish as 64 cans of tuna. Relaxing on this remote outcropping also keeps seals safe from ocean predators, like sharks, and isolated from terrestrial predators like bears and coyotes. During molting season, they scratch and scrape on the rocks to shed old skin. Seal bodies just aren't adapted well for life on land. Their limbs are shorter than any land mammal, and what looks like their armpit is actually their wrist. So graceful in the water, they're reduced to humping around on land, flopping themselves forward on their bellies. That's even more work than swimming. It's much easier to just stay put. Even though harbor seals are mostly solitary, they become temporarily gregarious at haul-out sites. A good spot is hard to find, so everybody tries to get along. Big males sometimes scrap during mating season, but this is a time for chilling out. So long as they maintain some personal space, dust-ups outside mating season are pretty rare. Off to the side, a gray seal uses the same haul-out spot, but keeps a healthy distance. Gray seals are a lot bigger and have been known to eat harbor seals, but there's no chance of a surprise attack here. They're equally inept at moving around on land. Seals' closest relatives aren't marine mammals like whales or dolphins. They're actually more closely related to bears and dogs. You can sort of see it if you imagine their blubbery bodies enveloped everything except their hands and feet. There's a clear pecking order here on the rock, with the youngest seals on the outside, closest to the water. They're not big enough to compete with the big males for the prime spots further up. And sometimes mother seals leave their pups close to the water, so they can go find fish and check on Junior without hauling out again. These aren't this year's pups, but they're still young. They're probably 2 or 3 years old. By the time they're 6 or 7 years old, they'll be full grown like these guys. The oldest males could be as much as 35 years old. They'll all loaf around until the tide rises again. The sandpipers at Johnson's Mills, New Brunswick, need their rest too. They've come a long way and have a long journey ahead. Some birds sleep on one foot to keep one leg warm at all times. Or they can tuck both in to get cozy. They do this because the sandpiper's bare legs are the place they lose heat fastest. Birds need to maintain a high body temperature to burn calories fast enough for the tremendous effort required to fly. Resting their head on their back and nuzzling it into the feathers is another way to conserve heat. And if a bird gets too warm, it shakes out its feathers to release the heat trapped near its body. A single bird has thousands of feathers. Preening is a sort of preventative maintenance on the sandpiper's flight gear. A gland near the tail produces an oil that the bird smears on its beak, then spreads over all its feathers. It helps with waterproofing and removes dust and dirt. The sandpipers peck away parasites while smoothing and shaping each feather's position in anticipation of the journey ahead. The particular size and shape of the Bay of Fundy amplifies the effects of the moon on the Atlantic's tides. In flat areas, the difference between high tide and low tide is the distance of 10 football fields. When the tide is in, the mud flats vanish. The rising waters push the semi-palmated sandpipers into a tighter formation. The security advantages of crowding like this seem obvious. More eyes and ears, keeping a watch for predators. When trouble starts, the whole flock reacts as one. Scientists have long studied the other functions of flocks. It's tough to see where one bird ends and another begins. Maybe this confuses and confounds predators. The security of the crowd will soon prove critical. Because high above, somebody is watching. To some predators, the flock of sandpipers represents opportunity. Peregrine falcons are high-speed, airborne predators. A diving peregrine plummets faster than any other creature on the planet. "200,000 wings begin beating. The flock moves with a coordination some have compared to telepathy. The flock is on the move. Scientists puzzle over how they all know to move at once. Now, watch this. The peregrine flies directly into the swarm. Look again. The falcon's a blur, blasting straight into the mass of confusion, the flashing of feathers. The peregrine only needs one bird. But today, he can't hold on to his lunch. Even if the falcon had been successful, one bird out of 100,000 is a pretty successful defense from an evolutionary standpoint. But the flock is sufficiently spooked. These shores are a dangerous place. They're moving on, heading south, following an ancient migratory path, orienting themselves by the sun, the stars, and the Earth's magnetic field. They won't rest again for days. Back in Duncan's Cove, the rising tide is slowly evicting the seals from the granite outcroppings along the shore. The waves lap the ledges where the seals haul out. Soon, this island will disappear until the tide goes out again. Before long, it's even more than a seal can handle. It's goodbye to the landlubber's life for now. After 6 hours of maximum rest and relaxation, it's time to go. They spend most of their lives in the water, where their big bodies swan around with the grace of a ballerina. They're built for the swim, but adapted for the rise and fall of the tides. In the early half of the last century, people hunted gray seals to near extinction on the American shores just south of here. But after decades of conservation, gray seals from Canada's wild east have been discovered repopulating the coastal waters of New England. The tide may have finally turned in their favor. Poets wax philosophical about the turning tides symbolizing the never-ending passage of time. They are relentless, predictable, and reliable. But they also represent change. In nature, the receding tide reveals opportunity to rest and to feed. As it rises, the sea reclaims everything it exposed before. The creatures living here evolved to exploit the rhythms and cycles of nature. The rise and fall of the water and the ebb and flow of life in the wild east. On North America's east coast, a hidden world of insects helps farmers grow their crops. Hardworking honeybees carry pollen between flowers, and monarch butterflies undergo a life-altering metamorphosis. On the jagged coast of Canada's eastern shore, a delicate and diverse ecosystem thrives on the fringes of the continent. Welcome to the wild east. Nova Scotia's Annapolis Valley is the agricultural capital of the wild east. This low-lying area has a microclimate all of its own. Two large hills to the north and to the south shelter it from the harsh climate of the Atlantic Ocean. Here, spring starts earlier and the summer is warmer. Good weather and the land's sediment-rich soil create an environment perfect for farming. For 500 years, industrious farmers have toiled these lands, their crops feeding generations here and around the world. But they haven't done it alone. Wildlife works hand in hand with humans to shape the farmland of the Annapolis Valley. Barn swallows are true country dwellers. Occupying barns and stables, they nest exclusively in man-made shelters across the world. Up in the rafters, they mold together their cup-shaped nest with mud and grass. Farmers welcome these birds. Barn swallows help cultivate their fields. They keep insects that damage crops at bay, like grasshoppers. Hummingbirds do their part too, traveling from flower to flower, eating nectar and spreading pollen. Along the way, they suck down sugar water from bird feeders left out by friendly farmers. Both sugar water and nectar help hummingbirds fuel their rapid wing movement. They actually prefer the sugar water because it's higher in calories. But once they're in the area, they do their part to pollinate flowers too. This apple orchard would never bear fruit without the birds and the bees. These are honeybees. Unlike their bumblebee cousins, honeybees don't build the structures that house their hives. Instead, they seek out pre-existing shelters, like dead hollow trees, or in this case, boxes placed here by the farmers of the Annapolis Valley. They build perfectly symmetrical wax honeycombs inside. It's only springtime, but the colony's already hard at work preparing for winter. Bees need to make enough honey to make it through the winter, and to do so, they gather nectar from nearby flowers. A scout arrives back at the nest. She squirms with excitement to tell her co-workers what she's found. Honeybees have remarkable communication methods. This is the waggle dance. It's how a honeybee gives directions. The intricate abdominal movements convey where the food source is relative to the sun. Up means go toward the sun. Down means travel the other direction. This bee is saying fly toward the sun and then take a left. The duration of the dance tells the other bees how far to go. Pointed in the right direction, the honeybees follow their instructions to find a nearby apple orchard. The bees are collecting two things: nectar and pollen. And these apple blossoms are chock full of the main ingredient in honey: nectar. This sugary fluid attracts bees and other pollinators. It is part of an important give and take between the plant and the bee. Bees suck up nectar through their proboscis, then store it in a special honey stomach to transport back to the hive. As they feed, pollen from the flower will stick to them. In flight, bees comb off the pollen and stuff it in the yellow pouch on their legs, called a pollen basket. Any unpacked pollen brushes off the bee as they visit other blossoms. This pollinates or fertilizes the flower, which will then produce an apple. Apple blossoms bloom for just over a week, so the industrious bees have to act quickly. A bee will visit hundreds of flowers before her honey stomach is full and she returns to the hive. One hive can pollinate an apple orchard the size of a football field in a single day. By summertime, the apple blossoms are gone from the Annapolis Valley, and bees have moved on to other flowers. When the summer arrives, it brings a seasonal visitor to the Wild Wild East, the monarch butterfly. The journey begins when milkweed, the monarch's main fuel plant, begins to emerge. Monarchs feed on the milkweed's nectar and use its leaves to feed their young. This monarch's ancestry stretches all the way to Mexico. 3 generations have passed in less than a year. Their genealogy is a consequence of the monarch butterfly's amazing migration. In March, the monarch butterflies in Mexico begin their journey north. A single butterfly lives for about 6 weeks before stopping to lay eggs, and then dying shortly after. After a 3-week period, a new adult monarch butterfly will emerge and continue north in search of milkweed. The journey is like a relay race, and it's brought this monarch butterfly all the way to the Annapolis Valley. In the fall, the final generation to be born from this year's migration will make the long journey south. Back at the hive, a forager returns with a full pollen basket. The other bees will help her unpack. They stuff the pollen down into cells of the hive and mix it with nectar and saliva to create bee bread. This is the bees' superfood, loaded with carbohydrates, protein, and all the other nutrients needed to keep energy up as they work from sun up to sundown. When bees arrive back at the hive, they pump the nectar they've collected out of their honey stomach directly into another bee's mouth to mix it with enzymes. Once it's been twice consumed, they pour the nectar into cells. As the water density in the nectar drops, it thickens and turns into honey. When it's ready, bees seal the cells to keep their honey fresh until the hive needs it. There are between 30 and 60,000 bees in a colony, and the female worker bees make up 99% of the hive. Worker bees have different roles in the hive, depending on their age. The youngest bees clean the hive and care for the larvae, feeding them honey. The next job up the age ladder is a construction worker, building the hive's infrastructure. Honeycombs are made from a wax that seeps out of the glands located on the bee's abdomen. As the bee gets older, it undertakes a variety of other duties, like bringing water from outside, where it evaporates and cools down the hive, or fanning the surroundings with their wings to improve ventilation inside. Worker bees also serve as the hive's bouncers, controlling who's allowed to enter. Honeybees recognize their own colony by scent. This bee is from another hive, so the 2 security guards are trying to chase it away. The oldest worker bees are foragers. They are responsible for traveling outside the hive to gather nectar and pollen. Bees live for only a month, and in this time, a bee goes through each of these jobs one by one until they die of old age. It looks like a painful death, but the dead bees will continue to serve a purpose. The approaching ant serves its own colony of insects. It will relay the dying bee's whereabouts to its members, who will return to carry it off for dinner. Even in death, the bee plays an important part in the food web of the Annapolis Valley. Back inside the hive, the circle of life keeps on spinning. The colony's queen has just laid these eggs. She's the mother of everyone in the colony. The one and only queen bee. Her scent draws flocks of workers toward her. The other bees are hardwired to serve her. She has the most important job in the hive, replenishing the workforce. A queen bee can live until she's 5 years old and lay up to 1 million eggs in her lifetime. But she only mates for a short period of time, a few days after she's born, coupling with 12 to 15 different males. The queen then preserves up to 6 million sperm inside her for the rest of her life. She uses these sperm periodically to fertilize eggs before laying them in a cell. These bees with the big eyes are the males, called drones. Their only job is to mate with the queen. New queens are only born when the old queen dies, so drones most often mate with virgin queens from other colonies. If they are unsuccessful, drones will die virgins and be chased out of the hive, so no precious honey is wasted feeding them. And there's one more worker looking after this hive, the beekeeper. These workers are part of an ancient tradition. Beekeeping instructions can be found scrawled across the walls of the Egyptian pyramids. This is called a frame hive. Inside, bees construct their honeycombs between removable panels. Beekeepers have a symbiotic relationship with the hive. The beekeepers transport the bees to fields blooming with flowers, where the bees can collect nectar to make honey. In return, beekeepers take a portion of the bees' honey and also sell their services to local farmers looking to pollinate crops, such as apple orchards. Beekeepers use a smoker to suppress the alarm pheromone produced by workers guarding the hive. This allows the beekeeper to retrieve honey and check in on the larvae bees, the next generation of his workforce. Back in the wild fields of the Annapolis Valley, a monarch butterfly's egg has hatched and matured into a hungry caterpillar. Right now, it's preparing to turn into a butterfly by eating as much as it possibly can, increasing its mass to fuel an amazing transformation. It's been alive for more than 2 weeks and has shed 4 layers of skin while growing. Today, it's 3,000 times larger than when it hatched. The only thing monarch caterpillars eat is milkweed. There are over 100 species of milkweed spread across North America. Insects love it, but milkweed is toxic to most birds and mammals. You are what you eat, so monarch caterpillars also become poisonous to a lot of predators. As they consume more of the toxic plant, the caterpillars develop bright, contrasting colors. These stripes are a warning to predators. Eating this caterpillar could kill them. When the caterpillar matures into a butterfly, it will still carry this poisonous trait. So the milkweed is both a food source and protector. After up to 3 weeks of gorging itself, this caterpillar has finally had its fill. It now seeks out a horizontal branch to support its transformation. From its lower lip, the caterpillar spits out a silk similar to a spider's and creates a mat on the branch. Then its two back prolegs merge together to create a twig-like appendage. The conjoined prolegs have minuscule hooks that latch onto the silk mat like Velcro. Finally, it's ready to hang, and the metamorphosis begins. Once its skin begins to peel, it's only a couple of minutes before it sheds its fifth and final layer of caterpillar skin. The pale exoskeleton is not a cocoon. Moths spin cocoons out of silk. Butterflies emerge from a hard exoskeleton called a chrysalis. As the chrysalis gyrates, it fights to shed the last remnants of its youth. In the warm summer, it will take 7 to 10 days for the adult monarch to emerge and fly through these fields. Its chrysalis is now transparent, and the butterfly inside is ready to emerge. During its transformation, the cells that make up the caterpillar's body broke down into a soup. Then the individual cells morphed into this new form. Once emerged, the butterfly hangs like this for several hours, until the outside of its wings fill with blood, dry, and stiffen up, all in preparation for flight. This winter monarch butterfly, emerging in October, will live up to 7 months, 6 times longer than the summer monarch. It will live in a state of suspended adolescence to conserve energy for its journey south. The butterfly will traverse the entire continent. It won't reach sexual maturity until, having spent the winter in Mexico, it arrives back in the southern United States the following April. Weathering storms and dodging windshields, the monarch will face a number of risks on its journey south. Inevitably, they won't all make it. Fortunately, the population is self-sustaining. Each northward migration greatly increases the monarch's numbers again, as female butterflies will lay numerous eggs. When the cool air begins to blow through the valley, it means the end of the season's milkweed bloom, and so it's time for the newly emerged monarchs to leave. Back at the hive, another new life is beginning. 21 days ago, this bee was just an egg. 11 days later, she was a larva sealed in a cell who underwent her own transformation. Now she's fighting her way free, struggling to join her sisters. And finally, she emerges and goes straight to work. The cycle continues on inside and outside the hive. Now that it's fall, the apples are in full bloom. Fittingly, these are called honeycrisps. They are just one of the 35 different types of apples grown here in the Annapolis Valley. All pollinated by a healthy population of honeybees. From a bird's eye view, the Annapolis Valley is a patchwork of farmers' fields. A closer look reveals a hidden universe where wildlife and humans work together, undergoing incredible journeys and amazing transformations. Soon, winter will fall across the valley, and the colors will fade. The bees will brave the winter here, huddled in their hives, surviving on their honey. The monarch butterflies will be long gone, roosting down south in Mexico. Come spring, plants and animals will wait, and the cycle will begin again. Life continues anew in the wild, wild East.